Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Selling Greenville, your favorite real estate podcast here in Greenville, South Carolina. I am your host, as always, Stan McCune, realtor right here in Greenville. You can find all of my contact information in the show notes. For any of your real estate needs, you can reach out to me. I'm a realtor. That is my job. This podcast does not make me any money unless people use me as their realtor. So I'd appreciate if you could support me in that way. And if you could support the show by liking, leaving a rating if you can on whatever app you're using. Leave a review if you can do that. If you're watching on YouTube, comment. Any of those things, all of those things help out this show. So I would just appreciate if you benefit from this show in any way that you please just do those things. I would really appreciate it. All right. We've had a few weeks where we haven't really talked as much about data, and I know a lot of you guys are data junkies. So I want to get right back into the data. And specifically, I want to address something that really, since I've started this show, has kind of come up a lot lately, but really in more recent, really the past year has been a lot more of a common talking point. And a lot of my listeners are, unsurprisingly, from out of state. A lot of people that are researching Greenville are interested in the upstate of South Carolina. They're looking to move to Greenville County, Pickens County, Oconee, Anderson County, Spartanburg County, any of these counties. These are all part of the upstate. And realtors, we work all of these different counties. I call this show Selling Greenville because I live in Greenville specifically. And Greenville is obviously the biggest metro area that is in this area. But we work all of those different counties, and that is what our MLS, the Greenville MLS, really covers all of those counties as well. But what has happened frequently as I've accrued more and more of these out-of-state listeners, perhaps watchers, now that I have this YouTube channel, as more people from out of state are listening in, they are coming to me with questions about, hey, I'm not seeing a whole lot that compares to what I have here in Miami, or what I have here in Chicago, or what I have here in Houston, or in Tucson, or in San Fran, or whatever the case may be. And so what I'm thinking about doing is buying some land and then building. I don't have land where I currently am. I would like to move to the Carolinas. The Carolinas are supposed to be cheaper, and that will allow me to buy land and then build a custom home that compares to what I have currently in the big city that I'm coming from. And then that'll be a marriage made in heaven, right? I can have the great house that I have in the city I'm coming from, but I'll move to the Carolinas and have more land. Property taxes will be lower. It'll just be and everything will just cost less, and it'll be great. And what invariably happens is people start to we start to actually dig into the options when it comes to buying land and building new construction. And invariably, it is actually a lot more expensive than people realize that it's going to be. They just, I just think people think that the Carolinas are just so much cheaper than the rest of the country that it's just going to cost a lot less to build in this area. And I hate to be a Debbie Downer, and I hate to be the one to bring bad news, but here's the reality of the situation. It costs way, way more to both buy land and to build now than it did in the early 2000s, the 90s, the past 20, 30 years, we've seen all of these costs go way, way up. And it's been dramatic. And it's at every level, right? Labor costs more. Like I said, the land costs more. The taxes are more expensive. Zoning, the permitting costs more. I mean, literally at every single level, it's more expensive. And so if you're moving from like Irvine, Texas, for instance, I'm just throwing that out there. By the way, this podcast, this isn't for any individual. If you're listening to this and you're like, oh, I think Stan recorded this for me, I am not recording this for you. I want to make that clear. I'm recording this for the dozens of people that I've had these conversations with that have caused me to think, you know what? Maybe there's something in the data that I should talk to people about here. But let's say that you're in a 30-year-old home in Irvine, Texas, and, it's I don't know, 4,000 square feet, and you could sell it for $800,000. I'm just spitballing. I have no idea. I don't know anything about Irvine. But you could not build something like that in Greenville in 2023. You couldn't build a 4,000 square foot home on land of any size, a postage stamp lot. You couldn't build a 4,000 square foot home for $800,000. And so these are the types of conversations I'm having with people, trying to make sure that people understand, hey, this is the way the market is. It's also important to realize that, you can always find a builder that will quote you a certain price. When I say you can't do something, I'm not saying literally that you can't do something in every instance. In some instances, I'm saying you don't want to do something. Could you find a builder to build you a 4,000 square foot home for $800,000 and include the land with it? You probably could. Would that be a nice house? Would that be your standard Greenville 800,000 square foot house? No. That would be a budget construction that would just be really large, and it would probably be on a small lot. And now you're saying, well, where's your data behind that? Well, I'm glad that you're here, because that is what this podcast is going to be about. So I looked what I did in preparation for the show. By the way, I'm juggling a lot of data, and I'm not going to, if you're watching on YouTube or thinking about watching on YouTube, I'm just going to apologize in advance. I don't have this data in a way that I can really share it. It's just in a bunch of tabs in a spreadsheet. And honestly, it's a lot for me to keep up with as I'm going through this. And I might even have to go back and correct something. As we're doing the show, I might forget something. But I'm not going to show any of this data. I'm not going to share my screen or anything of that nature for this specific show. But what I did was I looked the past 6 months, Greenville MLS, what new construction has sold, just to get a lay of the land. What are we seeing in the new construction market in Greenville? I don't want to just be basing things off of what I feel, what vibes I'm having right now. I want to actually see what the data says. And so I started high level, and then I started to refine my search results. And we're going to go on this little journey together, the same journey that I went on as I went through this. And I had no agenda. I really wanted to just see what the data said so that I can talk to you guys intelligently about what the new construction market is like. So what I did was I took all of the new construction sales from the past 6 months, and then I broke it down by median and average. Median being the middle number in a set of numbers, and then the average just being the average or the mean. And I looked at the average and median acreage, price, and price per square foot in order to try to figure out, okay, what exactly is going on here? And then I started to break it out some other ways that you'll see here shortly. So let's just start high level. All of the new construction sales in Greenville MLS, which includes Greenville County, it includes, I've already mentioned a bunch of these, Spartanburg County, Pickens County, basically the greater Greenville area is going to be in this data set. What we came up with was this, a median of 0.19 acres. So a very small lot is your median new construction in the greater Greenville area. So what this tells me is that this is pulling a ton of production built homes. Okay, so keep that in mind when you're picturing what type of home I'm talking about. I'm talking about a home on a small lot, generally speaking, in a neighborhood that has a bunch of homes that probably look exactly like it. The median sold price was $329,000, and the median sold price per square foot was $160.89. Okay, so those are all production-built neighborhood types of numbers. And some of these are in rural areas that are going to be cheaper than, for instance, City of Greenville areas or lakefront areas or Mountain View areas, whatever things are in high demand right now. The average, all of these numbers are pretty much always going to be higher in averages because they're going to be weighted more by the more expensive properties. So the average for the entire data set was 0.34 acres, a sold price of $368,753, and a sold price per square foot of $166.48. Okay, so that gives you the baseline. What is, generally speaking, on a very broad level, new construction in the upstate of South Carolina selling for, those are numbers that you can get on average, generally speaking, in the 160s a square foot range for a pretty small lot. And these are also going to be pretty small houses too, right? Generally speaking, you're talking about 160 a square foot, and you're talking about a $329,000 price point. What we're looking at is generally a, roughly 2,000 square foot house, something like that. So then I took that data and I said, all right, well, let's look at Greenville County specifically. And again, this show is selling Greenville. Some of you might be interested in different counties, but at the end of the day, we're going to have the biggest sample size in Greenville County. And so I limited the data specifically by Greenville County. Where do we go from here? All right, the median acreage for Greenville County for new construction was 0.18 acres, so slightly smaller, still a very, very small lot, 0.18 acres. Average sold price of $367,540, so 367 and a half. And a sold price per square foot substantially higher, $176.24. Those were all the medians. These are all still production built numbers, okay? So if what you're visualizing, you should be visualizing a house that looks like all of the other houses next to it, and all of these houses are very close to each other. Same thing as what we just talked about, except it's a lot more expensive now that you're in Greenville County proper. You go to the average. Again, the averages are all higher. 0.28 acres, 410,000 average sold price, 181.50 average sold price per square foot. So these numbers are starting to tick a bit up. So obviously these numbers are all skewed by the fact that these are production built houses. It's really hard to take production built houses out of the data set, but what you can do is you can remove homes that are in subdivisions. So I can set the subdivision to none, and that is precisely what I did. And what that roughly gets me, kind of sort of custom built homes. These are homes that were not built in subdivision. Now, I will caveat that there are some subdivisions that have custom built homes. This is not a perfect exercise. For instance, the Cliffs, right? You can build custom built homes in the Cliffs. They have very strict architectural standards. But at the end of the day, those are going to be custom homes, even though it is a neighborhood. And so some of those are not going to be in this sample. That's okay. It's still going to give us a high level idea of what's going on in the custom home world. So we removed all homes. We're still in Greenville County, but we're no longer in subdivisions. Here are the medians now. Now our lot size is a lot bigger. We're at 0.45, almost a half acre, with an average, with a median. I want to get these analytical mathematical terms right. The median sold price of $462,500, and the median sold price per square foot now way, way higher than what we've been talking about, $224.50. Okay. Remember, I was saying you don't typically want to build, if you have someone quoting you a 4,000 square foot home for $800,000, including the land, run, don't walk. That is, you're nowhere near the median of $224, and this does include the land, by the way. These are homes that were built on lots, generally speaking. At least that's the way it should be, the way it's entered into the Greenville MLS. So $224.50, that's your median. Your average is, again, a tick higher, 0.69 acres, so nearly 3/4 of an acre. Sold price, $493,600, and average sold $1 per square foot of $229 a square foot. Okay, so these numbers are substantially higher than the numbers we just looked at that included subdivisions. And by the way, I didn't run these numbers that only showed the ones in subdivisions. But remember that those numbers that I showed you within the subdivisions were also including the non-subdivision homes. So before, when I said $176 a square foot for all the homes in Greenville County, that included all of these that have a median of $224. So even those numbers that we looked at before that included all new construction in Greenville County were really skewed by these more expensive custom homes. So there's a big price disparity between if you're building within a subdivision, generally speaking, a custom built home versus these production built homes that are going to be within subdivisions. You're building outside, you're building your own custom home. Pretty good rule of thumb, $225 will get you an average, a normal, a standard non-subdivision custom built home that's going to be in the roughly $400,000 to $500,000 range. Okay. All right. So now we have that done. So what I did then was I also looked at land that was sold in the upstate as a whole, and then in Greenville as a whole. So let's look at the cost of land, because this is another question that comes up. So the average sold price for land that was listed the median was $75,000 with a median acreage of 1.47 acres. So that comes out to an average price per acre of $51,000 for all of Greenville MLS, not just Greenville County specifically. The average, substantially higher, the average was $153 and change, $153,000 and change for 7.68 acres, an average of $20,000 an acre. So this is what we see. This is what's going on here. Why is there a difference between $51,000 per acre for the median and $20,000 per average? The more land you buy, the less it costs per acre. And there's a lot of reasons for that. One of the main reasons is you're typically buying in a more rural area, and so the cost for the land is going to be less. If you're buying 10 acres, you're not buying 10 acres within the city limits of Greenville. If you could do that, the cost would be astronomical. It would be well north of $51,000 an acre. But if you are buying within a more densely populated area, the price per acre goes up, and that's where that $51,000 per acre number comes more into play. So just to give you some context there. But then I took this data and I analyzed it within, again, Greenville County. And here's what we came up with for medians within Greenville County. Median sold price of, and actually let me go back and look and see if I messed this up. Oh no, I thought maybe I had that mess up that I alluded to might happen before, but I actually didn't. All right, so Greenville County land sales past 6 months. The median sold price was $99,000 for 1.2 acres. So that comes out to about $83,000 and change per acre in Greenville County. If you want to look at average, the average sold price was $155,000 for 4 acres. That is approximately half, $41,000 per acre, which is actually not that far off from the median per acre that we looked at. That was just everything in Greenville MLS. Remember, that was $51,000. Now we're looking at if you're looking at averages that includes more acreage. Now that number doubles, right? Because before when we were looking at the average acreage for just Greenville MLS as a whole, it was $20,000 per acre. Now that number is $41,000 on average with a median of 83. And so here's what you should expect. If you want to be in Greenville County in a more densely populated area, you're going to be paying $80,000 to $100,000 per acre. If you're wanting more acreage outside of Greenville, main part of Greenville, you're going to get 4, 5, 6 acres, maybe in the Greenville County side of Greer, maybe in northern Greenville County near Slater, Marietta, maybe down towards Fountain Inn. Some of those more rural areas, you can expect a price between $40,000 and $50,000 per acre. All right, so now let's talk about what this actually translates to. I had someone tell me recently, "Oh, you're clearly from from Greenville County, or from the South, the way you talk. No, I'm from New Jersey originally, but I am married to a woman from Alabama. And actually, as I'm recording this, today is our anniversary. We've been married for 14 years, so pat myself on the back for that. And I guess maybe I should knock on wood as well. Anyway, I have some Southern influences in my accent, apparently, and that's not to be super surprising here. But here's what I did, okay? I took let's back up for a second. Let's say that you're moving to Greenville from out of state, and you're in that situation where you're like, or maybe you're moving from within Greenville. Who knows? I know people that live in Greenville that are like, you know what? I want to go out and buy some land and build a custom home. It's a very common thing, a very trendy thing right now. So let's say you're like, you know what? I want a 2,500 square foot home on 5 acres of land. That's kind of a thing that I hear, loosely speaking, maybe a little bit larger home than 2,500 square feet. But loosely speaking, I hear people throw those types of things around all the time. Here's what I did. I took the amount of, well, actually, hold on. This might be the mistake that I made. Give me a second here. Okay, we'll have to come back to that. I think I still did this right. What I did was I took the number of acres, 5 acres, times the average acreage in Greenville County, 41,000, and then I combined that with adding 2,500 square feet times the custom home price per square foot of $224,000. Sorry, 224. Give me a second. $224.50 dollars per square foot. So that was what we were talking about before. Is in the custom, no subdivision neighborhoods. That's what we are. That's what we're experiencing, and then I basically just added those numbers up. So taking the average acreage price times 5 acres, the average price per acre times 5 acres in Greenville County, and then taking the average price per square foot times 2,500, what do you come up with? You come up with $768,761. Now, that number is probably a little bit artificially inflated, and this was something I thought that I had corrected, but apparently I haven't corrected it. Maybe I corrected it somewhere else in here. I ran this data a few days ago, so it's not like really front of mind. But that number is a little bit high, right? Because that $224 per, let me pull that back up here in front of me. The $224.50 for the price per square foot does technically include 0.45 acres. So actually, you know what? I'm just going to correct this on the fly. Let's just say 4.5 acres, which is really going to be 5 acres, right? We have to adjust this for essentially half an acre in order to make this accurate, because that $24.50 for the price per square foot for those custom homes was assuming basically half an acre. So if we do that, we come up with a price of $748,000. So basically $750,000. That's what you can, loosely speaking, expect for a 5 acre house, a 2,500 square foot house on 5 acres, new construction, basically everything at average. Okay. All right. How does that compare then with if we're just looking at non-new construction? Let's just look at homes that have actually sold roughly in that same kind of house, same kind of acreage. What do we have when we look at Greenville County 6 months, the past 6 months, Greenville County properties that have sold on 5 acres or more? I pulled all of those as well. I did not pull this out of subdivisions. So these include homes that are in subdivisions. It ended up with 50 results. So 50 homes the past 6 months in Greenville County that included a house with at least 5 acres. Here are some of the numbers that came up with. The median acreage was 7.84, so quite a bit higher than 5. The median sold price was $707,000. The median sold price per square feet was $280,000, with a median total square footage of 2,517. So these are slightly larger houses with about 50% more land, and it's about roughly 40,000-ish less than the new construction. Okay, if we want to look at the averages, the average was 10.6 acres with an average sold price of $850,000, price per square foot $306,000, with a total square footage of 2,941. Those are the averages for these homes that I was looking at within Greenville. So let's compare now apples to apples, right? So we looked at a home, just kind of let's just call it a spec home, right? A make-believe spec home that was 2,500 square feet on 5 acres in Greenville County. Came up with that would cost roughly $750,000. But let's compare to this median home that has 7.84 acres, that has 2,517 square feet. What price would that come up with if we built that home from scratch? Remember, it cost $707,500 to purchase this home. This is already a home that was already built. What would it cost to actually build this home? If you run these numbers all again, right? You base your acreage price on $41,500 per acre. You base your build cost on $224.5 per square foot, and you account for the fact that this is where I had backed out that 0.45 acres earlier. What you come up with is a total price of $871,766. So that's a difference of basically about $160,000. Loosely speaking, is what we're talking about, is the difference between if you bought the same house on the same size house on the same amount of acreage versus if you built it within Greenville County. It's going to be about $160,000 to $170,000 more to build that house versus to buy the house that has already built. Now, what do I think about that number? I think that number makes a ton of sense, because if you're buying homes in that $700,000 to $800,000 range, that's on 7.8 acres, that's 2,500 or so square feet, that home's going to need some work. That is just the reality of the situation. It might need $160,000 worth of updating. I actually talked about this on a podcast, I don't know, probably a couple of years ago, where I talked about the dirty secrets of luxury housing in Greenville County. The main dirty secret is that most of these, what we call luxury houses, need quite a bit of updating. And so the question is, do you want to buy the house and then update it? Or do you want to just go ahead and pony up the extra $160,000, $170,000 up front to just go ahead and have it custom from the get-go? Most people that have that kind of money, that are looking to spend that kind of money, would just want to go with the custom house. You do have to remember, though, that quality of construction, even with a good builder at $224 a square foot, isn't going to be as good as the quality of construction for the home that was built 20 or 30 years ago. It's just the reality of the situation. Now, there are some things that'll be nicer in a newer home. It's going to be more outlets, more opportunity for smart home systems. Obviously, it's custom, so you can do whatever you want to it in theory. But in terms of quality of a construction, there's going to be some things, rather than brick siding throughout, you might have to go with hardy board siding, for instance. Things of that nature. But in terms of, and I don't even remember where exactly I was going with all that. Kind of like it's in the middle of the day now, and I'm recording this on Tuesday. My Monday was crazy. As usual, my Tuesday has been pretty full. So just bear with me here. But I'm looking at this and I'm like, you know what? $160,000 to $170,000 difference. that makes a whole lot of sense. Where I was going with that. So you have a few challenges with building that you have to be aware of. I just listed off, that the quality might not be quite the same. You also have to remember finding the right contractor is a challenge, and also finding the right land is a challenge, right? A lot of the prime land already has housing on it. And so that's where sometimes it's easier if you're looking for a house with land. Sometimes it's just easier to buy the house that's already built, just if you need to gut it or if you need to update it. However, you're going to find yourself, in many cases, that's the better option. Now, I'm not trying to discourage anyone from going the route of buying land and then trying to do a custom build on it. That's not the point. I'm just trying to be realistic about the challenges in doing that. It is expensive. And again, we're just looking at averages and medians here. We're not even looking at the top end of the market. But it's pricey, and it can be a challenge to find the right spot to build on. That is honestly the number one challenge, because here's the thing: the prime land that's out there is oftentimes these big lots that are 70, 80 acres or more that are going to be basically that are being sold to developers, and the developers can do whatever they want with it. But usually the most prime real estate is not just going to be 2, 5, 10 acres. Generally speaking, the prime real estate is in a huge plot of land that you have to buy the whole plot, and then you can subdivide off a part for yourself if you really want to do that. And so those are some of the challenges that people run into. So I just want to be realistic. I want people, all of my out-of-state listeners that are looking at coming to this area, I want you to have some actual data, some concrete numbers to be thinking about. Be thinking about, if you're looking at Greenville County, be thinking about $41,000 an acre, be thinking about $225 a square foot. If you're looking outside of Greenville County, those numbers are going to come down a bit. If you're willing to build in a production-built neighborhood, not have very much land, just have a postage stamp-sized lot, those numbers are going to come way down. And so that's some of what I think is helpful. This confirmed what I already knew. None of this came as a big surprise to me. Like I said, I didn't go in this trying to confirm anything in my mind, but it did. It confirmed exactly what I thought it was going to say to a T. All of these numbers were like, yep, that makes sense. Yep, that makes sense. Okay. And so hopefully that makes sense to you guys. I'm happy to answer any questions that any of you might have. I know that was a lot of data, but hey, you guys have had a few weeks off from the heavy data episodes. So I think that you're in the mental space to be able to handle that. So just let me know if you have any questions. I'm happy to answer those. If you want me to, it doesn't take me long to run these numbers. If you want me to run numbers, even for like a specific county or a specific area, draw a radius, send me a map and be like, hey, can you do that kind of analysis for this area? Absolutely. Let me do that. Even if you're not a client, obviously there's a certain level at which if you're just asking me to do a bunch of homework for you, I would want you to be a client at that point. But just a one-off, just to see if I can help you on something like that, I'm happy to. If you're listening to this show, even if you never become a client, you're indirectly a supporter of me and my business, and I appreciate you guys, and I'm happy to try to set you guys up for success, even if we never do business together. That's it for today's episode. You can find all of my contact information in the show notes. Please, if you want to reach me, I suggest texting first. I get so many spam calls. I'm going to most likely ignore your call if you call me out of the blue. So please text me ahead of time. Feel free to email me as well. If I don't respond, it may have gone into my spam. I respond to all of my emails within max 24 hours, usually much quicker than that, usually within 6 hours. I operate on an inbox 0 level when it comes to my email. So I'm trying to respond and get rid of emails as quickly as possible. But feel free to reach out to me with my contact information in the show notes. If you like the show, if you love the show, if you want more of this content, I've got another data-oriented episode coming up next week I think you guys will like too. So please like, subscribe, rate, review, comment, all those things, and we will talk again next time.